Hey everyone, welcome to part 5 of how to build a Graflex. Today we're going to be wiring our activation switch and feeding it through our switch holder like I've done here. But this was just a test for me. I'm going to be going through the whole thing for you guys to watch step by step. I want to apologize for the previous video where I did not properly place my, I did not show the placing of the brass rods into the chassis. I had recorded that, but I deleted the video file because I made a huge blooper and I forgot that the mistake I made was in the same video where I show how I install the brass rods. But you guys are smart, you get the idea, so I guess we can move on from here. Okay, so what we want to do right now is we want to let our soldering iron heat up, clean the tip, make sure it's always nice and squeaky clean. Like that. I don't know if you can see that. Let me just, there we go. Light always helps. Okay. So now that our iron is prepped up, we can start soldering. What you want to do is you want to, I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to be taking the alligator clip off in one hand. Actually no, I'm going to put it on, I'm going to keep it on one hand. So you want to take your activation switch into one of the jaws of your helping hands, and you want the activation button to look face down, like that. You want the prongs to look up. Now, if your prongs are longer, because mine, unfortunately, are of the very, very short variety. I'm not sure if my camera is focusing right now. There you go. You can see that my prongs are just small enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to be taking my plier here, and I'm going to just open it up just a little bit, just a tiny little bit on the inside, like that. Man, it's not helping. Let me just show you guys. I mean, just one tiny little bend on the inside. There we go. And you just want to take these prongs and point them outside just a little bit, like that. The difference isn't really shown, but the prongs are now ready to take some solder into them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually I'm going to switch the clamps for you guys. And I'm going to put this into my jaw, like I said, face down. My camera focuses. Okay, there we go. So it's all nice and face down. So you're going to be taking some wire. And if you remember the color coding for our activation switch, the purple wire is going to be the positive for the activation pad on our soundboard, and the black wire is of course going to be connected to the battery negative. So I'm going to be taking some wire stripper, and you don't want to cut off too much sheathing. You want to cut right about this much. I'm cutting it at the jaws of the 28 gauge because I feel that it does not take too much of the wire off. Because at 30 gauge, I feel that I peel a bit of wire with the sheathing and the wire is too thin. So what you want to do now is you want to take your wire, as I'm going to show you guys right now, and we're going to be pre-tinning it. The trick to soldering, because I have been discussing this with some people that know how to solder, and you know, like my dad and some other people that are more experienced in soldering, the trick in when it comes to soldering is not using too much solder. You just want to make sure that you use just a dab of solder, a good nice dab that will ensure that you have a strong connection. Now let's pre-tin our wire just a little bit. Just a little dab. That's it. It doesn't need to be too much. Clean your iron. And now we're going to pre-tin. And this is going to be a little tricky, but I want to pre-tin the lower prong, because you want to solder this on the let me show you with my screwdriver. You want to solder this on the inside of the prong, not on the outside, because it will add to the total diameter of the switch, and it will stress your clamp. Now I managed to put the one activation switch because I soldered the wires on the inside of the prongs and not on the outside. So it didn't add to the total diameter, and it fits just nicely. But we're going to do the same on the other side. So without further ado, let us continue our build. So where was I? Okay. Soldering iron, solder, pre-tin. There we go. And add that dab onto the prong. Make sure not to damage your I'm going to clean my iron. If you feel that you didn't pre-tin it properly, clean your iron, start from the beginning. You don't want to be in a hurry, but just take a dab and just, that's that. If it's not enough, add some more solder. This is a little harder than it looks. There we go. So we tinned our little prong just enough for the wire to sit in. Now if you feel that your wire is too long, you can snip it off, which I'm going to be doing right now. There we go. It's good enough. The whole thing has been pre-tinned. You want the sheathing to butt right up against the prong. I want this to be a nice, neat joint. Just like that. I'm not sure if you can see it, if the lighting is correct. But the wire and the entire sheathing is butted up perfectly. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my iron once again and pre-tin. I'm going to add just a bit of solder. That's that. Maybe at the bottom just a dab. I can't actually do that properly. I have to twist the thing. And that's that. Just a simple. I'm pretty sure that my connection is okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my wire, and it is a sturdy connection. So I'm happy with my connection. Now I'm going to be taking some heat shrink, some red heat shrink, because red always reminds me of positive, so I don't mix it up. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to cut it. I'm going to give it a sharp curve at the edge, which kind of reminds me of pasta. I don't know why. So I'm going to cut off some heat shrink, just enough. And always keep in mind, if you have some heat shrink and you want to feed it through your wire like I am over here, just take this and you feed it in your wire, and you feel that it's And you realize, actually not feel, but if you let's say that this wasn't a loose end and it was connected somewhere, you want to feed your heat shrink into your wire beforehand. You must always keep that in mind before doing any soldering and stuff. So I'm going to take this off and I'm going to make sure that the heat shrink sits properly on the inside. There we go. And right there. So I fed it through my wire, and simply take your soldering iron, make sure that it's nice and clean, make it a good habit, and let me just turn this on the side and just shrink the heat shrink tube very tightly as humanly possible. You want to make sure that this will feed through the channel on the inside. The heat shrink must be of the smallest assortment so that it fits into these two little holes. So you want a very, very tight shrink, and that's good enough for me. So that's that. I'm going to be following the same process for the second wire, and I'll be back in just a bit. And we're back. We did, oops. I've done both connections. To the best of my ability, they're on the inside of the prongs. They won't be taking too much space on the sides. That's what I'm hoping for, at least. So I've made sure that the connections are sturdy, and we'll see how this goes. So now you're going to want, to feed the wires through the clamp switch holder. It doesn't matter which direction they go, as long as they both are fed into the clamp switch holder. And there we go. Now you see this is going to want to sit in place, and you see that there's a little problem. So you're going to have to get creative with this one. So just gently make sure that the heat shrink section fits in first. So you're going to want to take your screwdriver and pinch the heat shrink inside. Get these pliers out of the way. So you take your screwdriver and you pinch the heat shrink to travel in with the wires. If the heat shrink doesn't go, wires don't go. And you just push that just a little bit at a time. No need to hurry, you want to do this just right. Use your hands and for the red heat shrink to travel in. So far, I've been using my screwdriver to pinch the heat shrink section inside. It still doesn't appeal to me yet, so I still have to carry on pinching and pushing. .3D printed plastic is very flexible and it's very forgiving, so don't be afraid, just push it in. There we go. Then you push the whole thing on the inside, and that's basically how it's going to sit. It fits in perfectly. I'm going to use my fingers to just press against it. That is the importance of having your heat shrink to pass through the holes and make sure that that your wires were soldered on the inside of the prongs and not on the outside. It didn't add to the overall diameter from side to side on the switch, so it fit just snug, but it fit into the clamp holder. So I have two of these, and I'm going to just be essentially, I'm going to break one off because I don't need one of the two. I'm going to see which one fits. So you want to test that this is good enough, that this fits. So what you're going to do is you want to take your clamp. Let me just zoom out. Okay. You're going to be taking your clamp, your bottom half of the Graflex, which is unthreaded. You take the D-ring off, the pommel off. Your emitter shroud, yeah, you should take that too. And I'm going to explain to you in a minute. You should leave your inner core on the inside. And I'm going to explain to you why. Oh, you do want your clamp or bubble card. In this case, since we're going with the Empire Strikes Back, I'm going to be going with my bubble card. And let me zoom out furthermore. So I'm going to assemble this. And I'm going to take my helping hands. I don't need my soldering iron anymore, neither do you, so you should turn it off. Take everything that you don't need off of your workspace. Make sure you always have a clean space. I'm going to take my heat shrink assortment. This was the 1mm assortment, and I'm going to put it back into its bag and into its box, respectively. What we're going to be doing right now, I'm going to take my screwdriver away. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking this and we're going to be placing it onto the clamp. So we're going to take our wires, left and right, and we're going to just click it in place with both of our fingers. Click. The reason why we're doing this is so that we can determine if the clamp is too tight, the activation switches will be always pressed. So you want to leave enough slack for your wires, for your clamp switch. You don't want to tighten it down too much. You want it to be just tight enough. Okay, let me just fix this. I think I put this inside out. Okay, now I found a little problem with my clamp lever. It's not pressing against the clamp. So you can fix that real quick. I'll be back in a minute. And we're back. I tightened the little washer that holds the clamp together. It was kind of skewed because of the stress that the clamp puts on it when it tightens. So you don't want to really stress that all too much. So let me just take my clamp switch holder. Now when this finally comes together, we're going to be taking a strip, very thin strip of aluminum from like a beer can or something, and we're going to put some double-sided tape in the middle so that this can stay nice and snug so that the clamp card doesn't risk coming out. You don't want the activation clamp too tight because, like I said, if you have the clamp card too tight, the clamp too tight that is, you will have a problem. Your switches will always be pressed. You want it to be able to click like this. So if the clamp is too tight, the buttons will not be pressing. So let me just take these wires and let me just feed them through at the same side of the clamp. Long. Okay, so let me take my shroud and let me just put this right here. We're just basically doing a test. We're not assembling anything. So hold the wires all together and feed them through the pommel. Okay, so we fed them through the back end of our pommel and we're going to do a soft assembly. Okay, so let us assume that this is what our clamp looks like when everything is on the inside. Okay, let's just tighten this just enough. One more rotation, that's it. Actually, let's tighten it a little more. This is just for show and tell, not too much. Okay, that is perfectly tight enough for my taste. Okay, so that's that. You have your clamp installed just for practice, and you want to take your clamp card or bubble card if you're going with a New Hope. It applies the same way because we're doing clamp activation switches, and this is very nice and snug. So this is a success. What we're going to be using our adhesive double-sided tape on the clamp switch holder is to prevent the clamp card from, you know, shifting. So I consider this to be a success. I can click both of my switches. They're not pressed down, so when the lightsaber goes on or off, I'm going to be only using one activation switch, so a pair of wires is going to be stripped off eventually. I'm not going to be using two activation switches. So I think I'm going to be going with the top, but the bottom is also cool. Now, I'm not sure. That is totally up to you. If you want to go with the top or bottom, that is also up to you to decide. Okay, so that was the reason why we did a soft reassembly of the shroud, the clamp, and the back end with the grips. Now you want to put everything back into place and take out your clamp switch holder and put these aside. And this has been a successful assembly. Now I'm not sure if you can use both of your wires to activate your lightsaber. You know, to solder both of your purples and both of your blacks to the activation pad and the battery negative on the board. But I think if my my math is correct, actually, that you will be able to activate the lightsaber regardless of which switch. I may be wrong. That is totally up to you. So I'm going to be taking off one of the activation switches, and I think I know which one is going off. But that's okay, since we can buy spares. That's not a problem. So we're done. We completely destroyed our previous activation switch, but the whole purpose of this is to make sure that we did the clamp switch assembly correctly. Now, what I'm going to do as well, I'm going to be taking the my 3D printed chassis, and just for giggles, I'm going to be feeding the wires through, just so that I am sure that they're long enough. Oops. Just to make sure that they're long enough to reach the end of the board. So this hole, like we previously said when assembling the chassis, is going to be the hole for the right side of the clamp switch, which is Empire Strikes Back and The Force Awakens. The other side has been barred with our rubber that we used in the previous episode, so that's that. So I'm taking my wires and I'm going to feed them through one more time. I'll take my crystal chamber out. And these wires are going to be traveling through this section in here, like that. So I want to make sure that my wires are long enough. I am sure, because this is where the soundboard is, it's good to have an excess of wire than too little. So that's that. Next, you can twist your wires and heat them, which is what I'm going to be doing right now. So I'm going to do that off camera so that we can conclude the final assembly for the clamp switch holder and the activation switch. I'll be back in a sec. So there, my wires are all nice and twisted. And if you don't have a heat gun, feel free to be creative. I have my I have a blow dryer, so what I just did was I just clamped the whole thing down and I did it for just a few seconds, not too much. You don't want to melt your wires, but essentially that's that. So this is nice and tidy. I suggest that you follow the same principle with everything that you do, everything that you solder. And I'm going to do the same with this off camera. So that concludes today's portion of, well, not today's portion actually. This concludes the first part of the episode, or part, where I go over the activation switch. And in a jiffy, we're going to be going over the main LED, which is the challenge. So bear with me, we're halfway through. And we're back. So we're going to be doing the main LED module. Now, we're going to be doing some soldering. So my iron is already preheated up. So how to start the LED module is you want to heat the base at the bottom with the tip of your soldering iron. Make sure that the heat disperses. Take your time. Nice and slow. Heat the pad up. And let's try and go for this. I'm not very happy with that. Not good enough. Okay, that's a little better. Let's see what we can do about the other one. Just pre-tune just a little bit. Make sure you don't hit your iron onto the diodes. I removed that, but that's okay. I am in no hurry at all. I want to make sure that these connections don't meet. Oops, that kind of sprung out of place. I'll be back in a second to try and fix it. Okay, we somehow fixed a smaller problem. Now let me just go ahead and do the rest. Trying to get the camera to focus onto the proper spot is a lot harder than it looks. So let me just take this onto the other side over here and clamp the LED down into place. So I'm pretty sure you can see what I'm doing. Nice and focused. Okay, so let's give it a go. I'm not sure if that's good. It has a little pointy thingy that I can you know, snip off with my wire. It's not a problem. You see, it's a cold joint. It's not good. Trial and error. It's the only way you can succeed. Okay. So let's do this. have a feeling that's a little better. Just see, that was not a good joint. Not good. Let me just take the whole thing off. Let me clean my iron, and this is a mess, but we're gonna make it. We're gonna pull through. Now the pros are obviously laughing right now, but it doesn't matter, because if you're not a rookie when you start out, and I don't know what you are. So we heat the base, apply just a dab of solder. If we can get that to connect onto something, that will be good. Okay, we'll be back in just a few short minutes to see what we've done so far. Okay, so we did what we could. What I did with my iron was I made these little incision grooves inside so that my wire can sit, the strip wire that is inside. So what I'm going to be doing right now is I'm going to be taking my helping hands. Okay, so now we're going to try and solder some wires onto the pad. So I'm going to be using one of my blue negatives for the die. Be very sure not to mix the colors and the pads. It starts with a positive, negative. This is the positive and negative for the white die. Then the one over here is the positive for the blue die, and the negative is over here. And the positive for the royal blue die is over here, and this is the negative for the royal blue. So if I'm going to be going with one of these, I'm going to have to, well, first of all, I'm going to have to pre-tin some wires. Which I will do real quick. You guys know the drill. So just take some solder, or soldering iron, and you just pre-tin, just a dab. That's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be going with one of my blue negative dies over here. So I want that to be nice and steady. And I'm going to have to figure out how that's going to go. So something like that. And as you can see, my my wire sits right, oops, sorry about that. My wire sits right in that little, well, groove. Hold on, let me just make this camera a little steadier. This is much better, I hope. So my blue wire sits in that little groove in there, which means I'm going to have to do some soldering. Sorry. Really don't like it the way it is. This is a little better. So I'm going to just take my soldering iron, pre-tin, just enough, and all you need is a glove to cover the wire. And that's that. Check your connection, see if it's sturdy. And that is okay. So I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to be doing the rest of these. So I'll catch up with you guys in a bit. So far we've done both of our negative wires, and I'm about to do the positive white one. I actually want to do show this off just a little bit. So let me show you guys what I'm doing. Pre-tinning my white wire over here. It's really difficult in this position, but yes, it has been pre-tinned. So we'll be back in just a few seconds, of course, because we want to do this properly, but you get the idea. You test your connections, and as you can see, my connections are great. The alligator clips do not damage the copper heatsink that much, which is great. So if you don't want to use your hobby vise, that's still okay. So I'll get to soldering these wires and I'll be back in just a sec. And as you can see, I started with my red wires as well. I'm not the best in the world, but I think I'm rather happy with what's going on. Now the heat is going to obviously going to start slowly melting the bubbles in the die, so be very careful. Just let it cool off for a few seconds. Just don't do everything all at once. Just let it cool down and resume what you're doing. This is a picture of what's going on so far, so I don't think that that's too bad for a rookie. And I'll do the remaining 2 red wires and we'll be back. I'm finally done with soldering all of my red wires as well, and I'm going to feed the last one through and just pull this nice and gently. Make sure to test all of your connections to see if they're sturdy enough. And essentially we have wired everything down. Okay, as you can see, let me just zoom out a little bit. Okay, so we have wired everything down. We need to be able to test if what we have done is working. Okay, so this is a lot of wire, as you can see. So what you want to do right now is you want to make sure that your dies are working. So you need to know the sequence of your dies. So like I said, you always start from the positive on the left and you go from left to right. So right now I am at the sink pad, for example. Let me just focus. Come on, camera, focus for the fans, please. There we go. Nope. Okay. Okay, it's trying to do its best. It's had a long, hard day. So where I'm holding it right now, you can see, okay, my solder joints do not look pretty, but they do work. Or at least we're going to see if they work. So you want to start from the left all the way to the right, where it says, okay, so where it says sink pad, you can see there's a red wire on the die, on the royal blue die. There's a red wire and there is a blue wire on the other side. So you're going to start the sequence left, right. And then you twist and then you go again left, right. And then again left, right for the white die. You want to make sure that you soldered these properly. So the way to do this is we're going to be cutting off the sheathing just a little bit, not too much, just a bit. We don't want to shorten our wires too much. We don't want to risk doing that. So I'm going to be taking my wire snipper and stripper, sorry. And that's just a bit too much, but it's okay. It's a long blue wire. Another one here. Another one. Big old DJ Khaled on you guys. Another one. Khalid, this one's been stripped. Another one. Okay, let me just do another one. This one's been stripped too. Another one. Okay, last one. It's white. And as you can see, for my American friends, and since the 4th of July is around the corner, at the time of recording this, you can see that I have been going with the colors of the American flag, which is red, blue, and white. Okay, so we have stripped the sheathing of all of our 6 wires, and we're going to be doing some testing, which is going to be quite fun. So I want to have my helping hands for this. I'm going to attach my helping hands, and I want to test, for example, my white die. So I'm going to find the red wire for the white die, and to do that, all you can do is just push some wire up and see which one is which. That's not the red I'm looking for. These aren't the reds you're looking for. Since we're doing some Star Wars related stuff, I thought some Star Wars related puns would look cool. Okay, so I think I found the positive for the red die. I'm not sure if this is correct. Okay, so let us start off by testing our white die. So I found the 2 wires for the white. You just push up the wire and you see which one is which. But let's start off with the white die. So, battery test pack in hand. Resistor is not supposed to be here, at least not yet. And let us start testing the wires. Okay, so I'm going to be putting my 2 batteries inside properly, and start testing your dies. So since the white wire is the negative, I'm going to be attaching my black negative prong for my battery pack, and the positive red is of course positive red. So let's see if it works. Let's see. Come on, LED, work please. I heard a spark. That's not good. That is not good at all. I'll be back in a sec. Okay guys, I have a problem with my battery pack again, but I think I sort of fixed it. So if we do test the die, it works beautifully. Let me just hold this nice and steady. There we go. So the white die works, which is great, which makes me very happy, which we did not burn it off. This is a success, my friends. So let's just put these 2 wires over here. Next couple of wires is positive from blue die. Okay. I make voices when I'm excited, so just don't pay attention to me. Pay attention to the LEDs, please. And this is the first time I'm actually going to be seeing these colors. The previous white die is our flash on clash, which we won't be needing a resistor for since it's going to be only momentary. So let's see the blue die, and it works like a charm. Blue. That is blue, ladies and gentlemen. It works perfectly. And last but not least is royal blue. So we put blue dye over here, and we take royal blue colors. And if you pay attention to the sequence of the positive and negative pads, you won't be having a problem. I forgot to cut off the sheathing of one of my wires. No biggie, I can do it just in a sec. There we go. So what I'm doing essentially is I'm attaching some alligator clips, and since it's copper, it will conduct electricity if you touch the 2 bare wires. It's not really suggested, but I really want to show you guys, and I really want to confirm this because this is live as I'm doing this. So I want to show you guys to see that the LEDs are working, and if they're working, that is perfect. That makes me happy. So let's test royal blue and let's see the difference. Please work me. Uh-oh. I'm afraid that my royal blue is royally... Nope, it works. It works! Royal blue works, and it's got a purplish hue to it. So that is royal blue. So we have tested all 3 dies. Thank God they work, because I really could have screwed this up. I am a rookie. I am terrible at soldering, but I have the will to make this lightsaber work, and it will work. And so far so good. Whew, that's a lot of pressure out of my chest. So the next thing you want to do is you want to twist all of your 3 positive wires and all of your 3 negative wires together, and see what works. So we're going to be doing that just in a second. And actually I'm going to do this off screen so that I don't take too much time, and I'll be back in just a second. So we have twisted our wires. Nice. And this little strand reminds me of the Greek flag, blue and white, so that's a happy coincidence. Now what we're going to be doing next is we're going to be applying some of our, oops, doesn't matter. We're going to be applying some of our well, thermal paste to the bottom of the dies. You want to aim the paste exactly at the bottom of your dies, because that is where all of the heat is going to be generated. So if you do have the thermal star pad from the custom saber shop, that will work too, but I don't. And I will be going with some heat paste. Thermal, well, shrink. Heat paste, shrink. Oh, I forgot what I'm doing. Hey, what is this about? Okay. So with my nozzle, before I go into this, I am going to take some time for the for this video's sake. I'm going to be using some of my rubbing alcohol over here and move the camera, because that's what I do. And I'm going to be cleaning my LED star underneath. So that the pores of the copper can properly adhere to the thermal paste. That's the idea. Next, we're going to be taking the rest of the, well, compounds, and I'm going to be cleaning this section, the heatsink base itself, with some, oops, rubbing alcohol. Just simply keep it nice and clean so that the paste can properly adhere to the pores, so that it can spread out nicely, very, very nicely. So this is going to be a tricky part, so I'm going to be cleaning my hands too, and I'm going to be taking my LED like that, and before I do anything, I'm going to be taking my wires and I'm going to feed it through my heatsink base. Everything is going to be fed through here. Okay. And just pass this through inside. And we have our heatsink section over here. So, with some nice focus, and we can just put this over here. We can, well, if you don't want to keep twisting and turning your pad to see which where the diodes are, if you look at the holes in the heatsink, between the holes, on the little prong that sticks out over here, this is where your diode is. So that is where we're going to be applying our thermal paste. So it's an injection, and I'm going to be squirting out just a little bit to get rid of the first bit, which is kind of watery. And when I'm when I get rid of that, I'm going to clean that later. It doesn't matter, that's why I have my PVC work mat. And I'm going to be dabbing just a little bit. That's one. Let me turn this around like this. Dab number 2, which is just squeeze the syringe a little bit. Doesn't need too much. And you want to do this rather, just zoom in a little bit. We're going for dab numéro 3. My French friends, I hope my German was good. I'm kidding, just messing with you. So, dab number 3. And that's that. So then you take your heatsink copper base and you feed it all the way into here. So now we're ready to press this together, nice and slowly. It's going to squeeze out, but it doesn't really matter. That means it's spreading everywhere, which is good. Hold it like that for a couple of seconds. Aim it a little bit. There we go. Press it against with your fingers. And boom. That's that. So if you feel that you want to clean a little bit of it, it's okay. I'm going to do so on the sides. Then I feel that it's sticking out a little bit too much, like that. And our base is ready. It has its thermal paste on, and I'm very happy with the way I spread it. So what we're going to be doing in other optics, you're going to need to glue this if you buy some from, like, let's say Saber Bay, because the heatsink tube is not threaded. So since we do not need any glue to put inside the holes, that is why these holes exist. If you have been wondering, these holes exist for the optic to sit on. So I don't need any glue. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be threading my LED module, and this is all going to be held together. These two indents underneath the LED base are for a screwdriver in case you want to bolt it down with some screws or something like that. That's what I've heard. That's what I know. So, and this is nice and tightly in place. So I'm going to be taking a napkin to wipe off this thermal paste off, and that's that. So we're done with the thermal paste. I'm going to take this nozzle off, put its cap on. You should keep this around. You never know when you might need it. You may be making another build someday. You never know. It's always good to keep around. So the LED has been assembled, but we're not done yet. We have some resistors to solder on. And in case you guys are wondering, yes, you have to do some math. Now, some of you are going to be asking, okay, Legion, how do you know what resistors to solder on? How do you know what resistors you need? So, if you guys didn't come here for the math, and thanks to the internet, we can find a quick solution to this, but you are going to need to do some math. The Custom Saber shop, when you look at the Tri-Cree LED and you scroll down, there is a bit of information there. And I'm going to show you guys real quick how to do that on computer. So I'm going to get off the workspace. and I'm going to show you real quick what I mean. So I'll see you there. Okay everyone, so we're on the laptop right now and we need to basically do some math. The reason why we're on the internet right now is because we need to calculate what kind of resistors we need for our LEDs, because it's not a given. We're using blues. Today it's blues. Tomorrow it could be red, it could be amber, it could be orange, it could be anything. So how do you calculate what kind of resistors you need? So you need, of course, the variables, and thankfully you don't need to do the math today. There are online calculators for that. So I'm going to be going to the custom saber shop. There we go. And on the custom saber shop, we're going to visit the site, and we want to go to Health Electronics. Try Cree XBE2. And we're going to be going on the one with the modified base because that's the one that we're using. So as you can see, here are the pricings, here are the LED colors that you can choose to incorporate in your build. And last but not least, this is what you're interested in. Now, this is a well, variables list if you want. And what's essentially being shown here is what color dye you're using. This is its coating. This is the color. And right here we have the variables that we care about. So luminous, minimum luminous flux at 350 milliamps is not something that you want to look into. What you want to know is the forward voltage of your Cree color, your diode color. So we are incorporating royal blue with a simple blue, which I can't seem to find. Oh, there it is. Okay, so essentially they I don't know how to say this, but we're going to be going to this site. It's called, you can just type in LED series, resistor calculator, anything. Resistor calculator, LED, and I'm at this site called hobbyhour.com, and it has a LED series resistor calculator. So supply voltage, as written over here, is the voltage of our battery, which our battery is 3.7. Almost every single lightsaber that has been constructed is a 3.7 battery. So the LED current is 1000 milliamps because, like I said, we are going to be using the forward voltage at 1000 milliamps. And the 3.4 volts is for the color and voltage drop. This one says it's about 3.6. So we're going to put it at a 3.47 for our royal blue. Where is it? No, it's actually 3.4, like the blue. So essentially, they have the same, you need to do the same exact calculation. So what applies for the blue, royal blue, applies for the blue. So basically, whatever the resistance calculator shows us is what we're going to be getting for both our dyes. It's going to be the same thing. So you hit calculate, and essentially it says calculated resistance 0.3 ohms at recommended resistor wattage at 1 watt. Now the rest of these things you should not really worry about it. What you need to know is that with a 1 ohm 2 watt resistor, this and this, these two variables are the ones that we care about, not the resistor precision, nothing. So at 1 ohm 2 watts, we should be covered, we should be okay. So we did our calculations, and we can go back to our workspace and continue to do the rest. So like I said, check what color you're using. If you're using amber, then you're going to go supply voltage 3.7, LED current always at 1000, so these two are practically fixed. And you're going to go, for example, amber 2.1 volts, calculate, and it's going to give you it's going to obviously ask for higher wattage, that is, and a higher ohm resistor. So you should always keep this in mind. You should always know what kind of resistors to get, because not all dies use the same resistors. So the ones that I'm using in this build are particularly for the dies that I have in my possession right now. If you're going with any other colors like red, yellow, green, or any other dies, you should do some calculations beforehand. So that's that. Or if you have access to an electronics store and you ask the vendor and he knows his stuff, he can also give you a recommended um, resistor. But you should always know that this is the principle of how to do some calculating yourself. It gives you an idea, and you can always ask someone who knows better. So that's that. And we can now get back to our workspace. So I'm going to be signing off here, and I'll see you guys in a second. Hey everyone, we're back at the workspace. We just did our resistor calculations. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the site I wanted to show you to properly do some calculations. Unfortunately, it must have been taken down or something. So one thing that you want to do before twisting your red positives together is isolating and marking your red wire for the flash on clash. That will be the red positive wire for the flash on clash, and you want to take both of your red wires. Generally you just want to you want to take your LED like this, or LED module, and we want to line the whole thing up with the chassis except for the red wire. Now what I went and did is I heat shrunk some of the I cut off the two blues for the LED negative, and I soldered them onto one wire because it is eventually going to help us with the spacing inside the chambers and the channels of the chassis. And what you want to do is you want to mark exactly, let me just put this over here so it stops moving around, but what you want to do is you want to mark the exact space needed for the resistors to sit in. You want them to sit right around here in this channel specifically, and where these two holes are, this is where I'm going to, well, at least where I'm hoping that my resistors will be sitting. So I'm taking a closer look again, and I already used my marker pen, and I don't know if you can see this, but I marked some of my wires. There we go. I marked them so that I know what and where I have to cut. So this is going to be a little tricky, and I'm going to have to, well, do some soldering. We're going to have to do some soldering with our resistors. So again, just eyeballing it, finding where I've marked where I'm going to have to need to cut. I don't want this to be too short. I really don't want to make a mistake that I will regret later. So I want my resistors to sit right about here in this part of the chassis. And of course, not the whole thing is going to be sitting in. You're going to be cutting the prongs off the resistor. So this is going to be the most challenging part up to here yet. So you do not want to cut your wires too short or too long. This is where you have to be precise, and I'm kind of a little stressed because I'm doing this for the first time, and I know that I've got one shot at this, but I do know that we will make it work properly. So I'm just doing some calculations and some approximations for my resistors, and I've decided where I'm going to cut. take away the red wire. And I'll be back in a sec to show you guys what I've cut. Okay, so we're back and I managed to cut some of the wire down. I'm kind of stressed right now because I really don't know if I cut my wire too short, and I hope I have not, because then it's going to be really tricky. You don't want to, cut too short and then shrink some wire together, as it will take space in your chassis. So you want to make sure that you get it just right. So I'm going to take my snips and I want to cut it right about to let's say, I'm going to take this part because this one's the straighter prong, like that. Put my LED module aside. These are the two blues that I cut off. We won't be needing them anymore. So, without my wire stripper falling away, cut the prong off, and with my trusty I'll take my red wires and I'm going to be cutting off some sheathing. Just gonna eyeball it a little bit. Turn my soldering iron on. Just a tiny bit more. I think that should be okay. We'll see. Okay, so with that, take my cupping heads. Try and bunch all of your, let me just zoom out a little bit. But you want to be able to bunch your wire away just a bit. You just want to take the rest and just point in a different direction so that you're sure. Oops. And as it always has, we're going to be pre-tinning our wire, taking our wire stripper out of the way. This is where you need to be very careful with where you put your stuff, because you don't want to trip your wires or anything. You don't want to stack your tools onto your wires and then suddenly tug them and pull them. So you want to be careful. This is where you want to be very, so that you guys can see what I'm doing. I don't know if it's focusing. There we go. So let's re-tin. I think that's okay. Okay. Let's go on to soldering these two things together. And before you do that, and it's something that I said, and thankfully I didn't forget right now, you want to take your heat shrink assortment, and you want to take some heat shrink, of course. And now, since the wire is already connected to somewhere, you cannot afford to forget to apply your heat shrink. Because if you forget, then you cannot put some heat shrink on. So I'm going to do the calculation of how much I'm going to be needing. I'll be needing just about a fingernail, so cut off some heat shrink. Put this off to the side. Put the heat shrink to travel into the wire, just like that, and drop it into place. if I'm sure that that's okay. I'm gonna be taking my, oops. I'll take my LED out of the way so that you guys can see what I'm doing. So we're gonna have to solder that right now, so some solder. Too much. Damn. It's too much solder. See, this is the disadvantage that a rookie has. I'm gonna have to correct this and be with you in just a sec. Okay, I'm back and I corrected my mistake, and I already heat shrunk the connection, and I kind of bent my wire. This is a practice from East Coast Sabres. Actually, I'm following the entire steps from his build because I have faith that it's a much better way to do things. So we're going to go again, and we're going to be doing the same thing for our second resistor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be taking off its paper. It's protective wool tape, and it's best if they ship these things to you this way. So we know the drill. Cutting it to the desired length, taking the prong away, using our wire stripper, exposing our wire, tinning our wire, and always cleaning it, making a good habit out of it. There's our wire. It's tinted. That's enough. Let's do this again. So let me just center it again. We're about to do some soldering. Again, too much. But let me just inspect this. Okay, so both of our resistors have been soldered on, and I'm going to do the same bend that I did on the previous one. So, and nothing too fancy, as Obi-Wan would say. So basically the reason why these two have been bent together is that they can actually touch. And we want them to touch. So when we twist these wires back together, is that we can have our flash on flash red, and we can solder everything together over here. And I'm going to have to set this up in a bit, and I'll be back. Okay, so what we're going to be doing with these two prongs, the thing is, we want our resistors to want to bunch this whole resistor, like set, if you will, into one bundle, just like this. And I want my flash on flash red wire to be soldered right about here. So I'm going to be stripping off some sheathing, and I want to solder both of my leads that I'm obviously going to cut, and my flash on flash positive. So I'm going to be twisting my wires, and I'm going to be back when I have soldered the whole thing. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so now I soldered my red flash on clash wire, and I want to see if this is going to fit in. I soldered my red flash on clash wire onto the onto the resistor bundle, and right now I have to take this off. I know it doesn't really look that much. Calculate how much heat shrink I'm going to need. This much should be okay. I'm just going to improvise like that. Could use just a little less. Coming off the proper amount for the heat shrink needed. Okay, so let's switch alligator clips. The toothless ones are very good for this sort of thing. Like that. I don't know if you can see it. With all this, I made a huge mess with my solder around here until I eventually got how I'm supposed to do this. So let me just take this over here and clamp this gently. Okay. I don't have to pass my heat shrink first because this wire isn't connected to anything. So I'm tired. All the soldering today is just a handful. Okay, so retin the tip and the wire. And put that over here. You can't see what I'm doing. Yeah, so we're going to be doing our last bit of soldering for the LED. Hope we're done after this, because this was rather tricky. Okay, it looks like a mess, but I'm going to heat shrink the whole thing up. Test the solder joint. It's okay, it's not going anywhere. Oops, some wires exposed. So I'm just going to go just a dab. That's it. Looks like a desperate mess, but I think it should hold. It's pinching my positive red wire. Okay, so feed the heat shrink, and I'm going to shrink the whole thing down. And just free this. Now my resistors are not perfectly aligned. that won't be a problem, because what we're going to be doing, again derived from East Coast sabers, is a very neat way of taking this entire bundle, and what we're going to do is we're going to take some clear heat shrink. We're going to feed this into this tube, and it sits in beautifully. So obviously I'm going to have to cut some off and just slide this out. I'm going to measure how much I'm going to be needing. So I'm going to cut off about this much. Okay, so I cut off some of the heat shrink. And now this is nice and tidy, and it's also going to be safe for when you're doing some dueling and whatnot. So that's why it didn't really matter. It didn't really matter for that bare wire hanging out. Something just okay, and basically I'm going to just hold this with my one helping hand, and I'm going to be shrinking this down. Just take your time. Okay. And carry on dabbing some heat. Be very careful with the wire. Still have some solder. I want to continue shrinking just a little bit. And there we go. So this is all nice and shrunk up, and it looks very tidy. So if you want to take some tape and just tighten the edges around, I think you could do that. I'm not 100% sure. Unless you feel that you want to continue just... Ooh. If you've got a heat gun, this is much safer because you do risk burning some wire. Like that, jeez. And the way I'm tightening the openings, both sides of the heat shrink. Anyway, clean your heat shrink because, well, it's always good. Clean your soldering iron. And I think that we're done with the resistor part. And that is your LED module. We have our resistors safely soldered on. If you've made a mess like I have, it is good at the end of the day when you're done with well, today's portion. You want to, well, I do suggest that you should clean your workspace. When you have a clean workspace, it also helps your mentality a lot better. You feel that you can do things a lot better, things are more proper. Let's just zoom out. So, solder spool out of the way. I'm going to be cleaning my PVC mat. Only time will tell how durable and how sturdy this is. My connections are very amateurish. They're not great. I just dabbled a lot of solder onto that. So in the end, all of our positive wires are going to be connected through this part, and they're going to have one positive wire for the whole LED module, and our two negatives, which also got one wire, and our flash on the board. The reason why we did this was so that we can have as much space as possible on the soundboard. We do not want to bunch up too many wires at the end, so yeah, there's that. So I hope you guys found this useful. I'm not the best, but I wanted to show you guys that I do have the will, and where there's a will, there's a way. And here we actually did it. We do have our soldered wires. So I'm still kind of stressed, but I'm kind of relieved that this part is over, because to me, up to now, this was one of the hardest parts. And time will tell if my soldering did work. So without further ado, guys, I'll see you in the next video installment, where I believe we will be going over our speaker, and then our battery, and so on, until we finally reach to the board where we assemble all of our things together. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you guys next time. So thank you for watching.